Thank you for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. Just about an hour now from the first game of the NFL regular season, and one of those teams is featured on this last segment of mine, predicting what the AFC West division is going to finish out like in 2024. We're going to look at the Broncos, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Chiefs, of course, and figure out which one of these teams is going to finish in spots 1 through 4. And so, without further ado, we're going to start off with that number 4 team. I have the Broncos. Unfortunately for them, finishing last in the AFC West this year. It's just a matter of fact that they're just starting, I think, this process with Bo Nix now. And if you guys if you guys weren't able to tell already, these restarts, these new beginnings for some of these teams don't really sit well as Bo Nix played, as good of a coach that Sean Payton is historically, right, having success. I think that it's never really felt great with me putting these restarts anywhere higher than 4th, just because, again, you have a lot on your plate just right off of the bat. And while Bo Nix might be an experienced rookie, looking great like I mentioned in the preseason, it's still a massive jump when you actually get into regular season football. Some of the departures that they had, Russell Wilson being one of them, also Jerry Jeudy leaving, Justin Simmons, they were able to replace them with Josh Reynolds. Not so much Justin Simmons, but obviously Bo Nix coming in there as well. I mentioned it just before in this episode that Russell Wilson did get criticized a lot last year. The relationship with Sean Payton wasn't great, but he had a solid year for them. He was up there in some of the production stats, just playing very well from a quarterback spot for this Broncos team and had them in a lot of close games. So now Bo Nix has to live up to that in his first year, and if he doesn't, I just feel like the Broncos are more likely than not to finish last in this division. They couldn't really add anybody else in free agency because of the whole salary cap issue with Russell Wilson being in that hole, trying to dig themselves out of that. It's tough, and they couldn't add too many pieces to their roster already, so they're one of the teams that didn't really improve that much as well. So I have them finishing last this year in the AFC West. And then, just moving on barely from them at number 3, I think the Chargers will finish number 3 this year. Still have a ways to go in what this team ultimately wants themselves to look like in the future under Jim Harbaugh. It's tough this year with having to make some tough decisions, getting rid of Keenan Allen, and trying to build up this roster and make it a competitive roster at that as well. You bring in Jim Harbaugh as well. You have a quarterback in place, which is great with Justin Herbert. I think he's going to benefit this offense a lot. Just having that franchise quarterback is going to make things a lot easier for them. But with that being said, the defensive side of the ball for this team really concerns me even still. They have, good players like Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and Derwin James, but even still, we're talking about a defense that was bottom 10 in points allowed last year and bottom 5 in yards per game allowed as well. And they didn't make too many changes on that side of the ball. So with that and the lack of offensive firepower for Justin Herbert, I think it's going to be enough having Herbert to kind of mask it. But in this division as well, when it looks like, regarding what I said about the Broncos, they do have offensive firepower. Courtland Sutton there, Josh Reynolds. This Chargers team would love to have a guy like Courtland Sutton. Same thing with the Raiders, just talking about them a little bit in advance. Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, obviously, Brock Bowers. They have a lot of offensive firepower, and we're not even talking about the Chiefs yet. You need guys like that to compete in this division, and lacking that, I think, will haunt them in some games, not being able to put up enough points. That's what the NFL is pretty much nowadays. So the lack of doing that, the uncertainty around that, hoping that guys like Ladd McConkey step up, Quentin Johnson as well. They're trying to focus around the running game, which is great. I like J.K. Dobbins, and I like also Gus Edwards with the offensive line work that they were able to do. But at the end of the day, when you're going up against some of the better teams, offensively, you need to throw the ball efficiently, and I'm not sure if I can rely on those guys yet. to get over that hump. They have an easy schedule, the easiest schedule in the division, which should benefit them, honestly, but I don't think it's enough to get them any higher than number 3. With that being the case, it means that obviously the Raiders are going to finish number 2 for me, but they're one of those teams where if it goes according to plan, I guess it is kind of like all teams, but more so with the Raiders, if it all goes according to plan, Gardner Minshew is better than what Jimmy Garoppolo got you last year, they have enough to finish number 2 in this division. I really believe that for a couple of reasons, right? You look no further than the guy on your screen, the best offensive player in this division. Outside of quarterbacks, you can debate Travis Kelce, but at this point in his career, I think you would take Davante Adams where he is in his career right now. He's the best player outside of quarterbacks in this division, and with that being said, it really relies or depends a lot of their success on him, obviously, but also Gardner Minshew, like I just mentioned, coming in now, beating out Aiden O'Connell, who had that experience with the Raiders last year, to beat out Aiden O'Connell, and now him being the guy right off of the bat, it means they have a lot of confidence in him. They believe that he is able to provide them with better production than obviously Aiden O'Connell did last year, alongside with their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. Both of those guys have to work together to get more out of this team than Josh McDaniels or Jimmy Garoppolo did out of them just a year ago. It was very frustrating. I'm sure you guys saw, if you saw the receiver series on Netflix, that it got to a very nerve-wracking point with Davante Adams that he was, actually considering just leaving, throwing it all away, and just getting out of there. Luckily for them, Antonio Pierce came in. Another reason why I'm high on the Raiders. I really like Antonio Pierce as a coach. I think he brings the right mindset to this team, and just roster-wise, compared to the Broncos and the Chargers, just offensively, they have Davante Adams, obviously. Brock Bowers comes in, can line up at tight end. You could put him at wide receiver as well. Jacoby Myers is one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. He played great for them last year. They have the pieces in place to help Gardner Minshew. It's just really up to Gardner to make those throws when they will become available for this team. And also on the defensive side of the ball, not a lot of people, I think, really realize that the Raiders were a top 10 team in terms of points allowed last year in the NFL. They averaged allowing 19.5 points per game last year, which is very good. Regardless of yards or anything like that, if you can prevent teams from scoring on you, it's a great thing. It's a fantastic thing. If teams get to the red zone, but you bunker down and stop them, limit them to field goals and things like that, it makes a difference, especially in this division with all the offensive firepower that they have. And on top of that, on top of having a guy like Max Crosby, they add Christian Wilkins on top of that, which is a deadly duo for Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes. All these guys that are going to have to face those two in the middle is going to be a nightmare. So having a good defense already from last year, I think, is another reason why I'm so high on the Raiders. They do have a tough schedule. They do have the, I want to say, 8th toughest schedule in the NFL, the toughest schedule in this division. But even so, I think they have enough, barring that the quarterback plays out like they hope that it does. I think they do have enough to finish number 2. And then, obviously, to end out this segment, end out this show, no surprise, the Chiefs are the number 1 team. I have them as the number 1 team in the entire conference. They're going to win this division. They're obviously better. The Chiefs just really not thinking about the AFC West just singularly. It sounds weird to say, but they're good enough to obviously think bigger than that. We're talking about history with the Chiefs now, right? They're on the verge of three-peating with Super Bowl championships, never done in this era of the NFL, or in NFL history, obviously, I should say. So they're thinking long-term. They're on that type of level where everybody else in this division is trying to figure out their quarterback, trying to figure out the rest of their roster. For the Chargers, same thing. The rest of their roster, young quarterbacks coming in. Do you have enough on defense for some of these teams? The Chiefs aren't thinking of any of that. They're thinking about the end game now. They're thinking about cementing themselves in history as a team more so than they have individually with Travis, obviously, Patrick, obviously. That's where they are. There's levels to this, right? Is what everybody always says. The Chiefs are going to win this division. They're a lot better. Defensively, they didn't lose too much also, so they're right there with, last year their offense wasn't as good as it was this year, and they won the Super Bowl, obviously, getting in those moments. When you get to those tight moments, those pressure moments, I don't think anybody is more comfortable than this team alongside Andy Reid and his play calling. They have everything in place to win this division, so not an exciting pick, I know that, but it's the truth. It is a matter of fact. They're going to win this division, and once the playoffs start, it's going to be them against everybody. Everyone's going to try to be taking them down, and they're as prepared as anybody. So they're going to win this division. Those are my picks for how the AFC West will finish out this year. That is all of the divisions here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast that we went through. Now, just about an hour or so till kickoff, we are wrapping up this show to get you guys out of here to go watch that game. I want to thank you guys, though, for tuning in to today's episode. Please make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. If you want to catch more of this show, check out both YouTube channels, the GSMC Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel, to catch more NFL content with this show in a variety of different ways. And lastly, a reminder to tune in every weekday to check out more stories, coverage of all stories in the NFL with me, Manny Maradiegue, as your host. Thanking you guys for joining me yet again, and I'll see you guys back here on Monday to recap tonight's game and talk some more about the game tomorrow, the first ever one in Brazil.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to